Well, good morning. I'm finally getting around to a subject. It can't be a better day for doing it. Just got back from doing a little scouting trip checking for deer and come across about a 280 to 300 pound blackie. And the subject of this is why this old mountain man will never carry a 10 millimeter as my GRIZ defense. And I'm going to ask you guys to be patient with me because this is not going to be a short video. I'll do my best to edit out all the hems and haws and all that good stuff that makes it last way too long. But at this point, I'm going to pull out a little bit of bullet points to try to keep me on track. Now, to start with, I feel there's some premises and some definitions that need to be covered before I get into the actual caliber itself. And that is one for sure that I need to get into is a fundamental difference between what a grizzly situation or dilemma within the lower 48 is as opposed to Alaska. I'm going to keep the Canadian stuff out of it because I do not know their firearms laws and I certainly don't know their game laws. But when it comes to lower 48, the key difference between Alaska isn't the size of the bear, isn't the ruggedness of the country. It is that in the lower 48, it is a grizzly bear is a federally protected animal. And it's kind of a running joke among guides and people that live in that you better have some hardcore evidence if you're pulling the trigger, howdy neighbor, pulling the trigger on a GRIZ, including it's better that you have a little DNA swab. It's not funny, but it's kind of a running joke. Why? Well, first of all, it's an immediate loss of and confiscation of vehicle, cash, guns, and most likely even a lifetime of hunting licenses. If convicted, you lose up to, I believe it was a $10,000 fine and up to X amount of years, and I don't even remember the exact number, but you're going to go to federal prison. So you don't just go, a bear looked at me and pull a trigger. It is literally you or him type of situation, and you better have good evidence. Now, the next thing I want to get into is definition of defensive bear gun. So, I guess the easiest way I can do that is to start with a lot of these guys that talk about 10 millimeter as being the ultimate bear defense will do top 5, top 10 list, and almost every time they'll include something that looks like this. Okay, you with me? And then they'll mention for some reason there's only one gun rifle that they ever put into this list, and it happens to be an 1895 in 4570. Well, first of all, they've already lost a little credibility with me because they mentioned this as bear defense. And I'm going to explain something to you. Let's talk about this in a commercial sense. In a commercial sense, an outfitter puts together an outfit as soon as they can get into the country to start setting up camps, getting them ready, getting them filled with wood. If it happens to be wilderness, they can't use chainsaws. They got to use horses, crosscut saws, all that kind of stuff. But an outfit is a camp of more than one worker. There's camp cooks, camp keepers, wranglers, guides. It is a complete deal. Try packing this guy right here, or any rifle, and gather firewood, or cook a meal, or whatever the case may be. When it comes to bear defense, you could go 20 years doing these activities and never once come into a attack. But it's the best way I can put this is, if you're out of compliance, which is stealing a word from the concealed carry people, you're out of compliance at that one instance, it's a big deal. Try packing this thing around in any of those situations and still having it in compliance near you at the very moment you may or may not need it. This is bear capable, but it doesn't matter what rifle caliber it is no good to you if it's 2 feet away from you, 4 feet away from you, 10 feet away from you, or laying behind you on a saddle scabbard, or leaning up against a tree. Oh, by the way, what tree was it? Shit, I swore it was that one. I can't see it. Absolutely useless. So if your defense is a rifle and it ends up away from you, well, then you might just as well be packing a 22. Doesn't matter. Bear defense means you have to be in compliance doing multiple things. Now, before you, I have never carried anything personally less than 7.5 inches. It is what it is. But before you, I have a rig that I have worked on multiple tasks of that. And like, I've done dishes, I've actually chopped wood, I've done a multiple group of things with this. You've seen me change my shoes and different things with this particular rig. And the only instance where I found this to be a problem is if I wanted to carry an armful of wood, which might make more over on the shoulder slightly bit better, but nonetheless, an 8-inch revolver right now on my chest, and I can do just about anything I need to do. The best case scenario with this shotgun or a rifle, to keep somewhere close to it and still be able to function, is it being across your back, slung across your back crossways. Because if you got it on your shoulder, try casting a fishing rod even, and not have that thing keep sliding down your arm and end up, it gets to be such a pain that it gets left behind. I've never seen anybody carry something like this in the woods unless their whole existence was to just walk straight lines, or their only job was to stand guard like somebody at a guard post at a station. It'll get left behind every time, and if you're not in compliance, it can't be considered defense. To make this point a little clear, what if I was sitting here on this video telling you, oh, by the way, in my top 10 list of concealed carry, this is my recommendation. Everybody in the world would look at me and tell me I'm knucking butts. Same for me when they talk about anything like this as bear defense. So, to be clear, bear offense, where you're trying to score. Bear defense, where you're covering your ass and trying to put the play to stop. With me? Hope that's as clear as I need to be with that. Also, I hope I'm making clear sense, but for me, a rifle is my first shot, and why I've always been comfortable carrying single shot rifles in bear country was because I didn't have single shot on my chest or on my side. Hope that covers it. Now, I do have some, like I said, some bullet points to try to keep me on track from here. But today I'm going to talk about multiple cartridges to start with. And for most part, I'm going to try to stay in a golf ball to golf ball comparison. Now, that may sound funny, but they don't make hundreds of different varieties of golf balls for no reason at all. And I can't tell you that I know what the heck they are, but they do. In every instance, except for the first two, I'm going to refer mostly, as close as I possibly can, to bullet weights commercially introduced at the time that these came out, and in the predominant weights. And the first two, obviously, start off with this 10 millimeter was not introduced in 220 grain. But we're going to use that as our base point. 2, 357 Remington Magnum was basically introduced as a 358 grain. Now when I talk about introduction, I think back to when most pistols, when they were introduced in these calibers, were a jacketed soft point. Hollow point wasn't predominant. Casting was, but still, casting even now has become something completely different than then. But I'll talk about that as I go. But let's start here, and I'm going to do kind of what Plowboy did. But again, I'm going to try to keep close to comparisons. And I'm sorry, I don't see that well, but I'm going to try to stay on it. 10 millimeter, using, again, his buffalo bore bullets, claimed to hit 1,200 feet per second for 703 foot-pounds of energy. And he talked about Taylor's knockout, which is reasonable. That shows up, and I'm going to round up here, to come to 15.1 pounds of energy for a power formula of 264. And I'm going to highlight that so I don't get lost. I made it this far. Well, that's a weird highlighter. I've never seen one like that. Anyway, now I'm going to go from that 10 millimeter to 357 Magnum, because everybody tries to say, go to this, well, it's better than a 357 Magnum. Well, in this case, I'm also going heavier than traditionally at 180 grains, still from buffalo bore. It claims 1,400 feet per second for 783 foot-pounds of energy. So already at 783 foot-pounds of energy, I'm 80 foot-pounds heavier than the 10 millimeter. In this case, though, the Taylor's knockout comes at 12.7 for a total factor of 252. So let's give it a benefit of the doubt and say we'll give the edge to the 10 millimeter, but not by much. We give it the edge based on those bullet weights. And now I'm going to get into the 41 Remington Magnum. And in this case, was originally introduced in a 210 grain bullet. So I'm going to use a 210 grain bullet. In my opinion, decent enough bullet. My choice would be around 240 for it. Hard cast is probably going to be all you need, but in this case, I'm trying to stay as close as I can to golf ball to golf ball. 41 Remington mag at 210 grains, according to Buffalo Bore, runs at 1,550 feet per second for 1,120 foot-pounds of energy. That right there alone is more than 400, make sure I'm saying this right. Yes, more than 400 feet per second, or foot-pounds of energy. I think I'm doing that right in my head. 7 plus 5 is 12. So yes, 400 for a Taylor's knockout of 19.10 pounds. Power factor of 325. So we have gained 65 foot-pounds of overall power performance by just going to the 41 Magnum. 41 Magnum just left the 10 millimeter behind, comparing golf ball to golf ball. From there, I'm going to go to the 44 Remington Magnum, a gun I carried a lot, both in a Red Hawk and a Super Black Hawk. In that 240 grains, the barrel, according to Buffalo Bore, at the same 1,550 feet per second as the 41 does. I got to make sure I'm looking at it right, for 1,280 foot-pounds of energy, and a Taylor knockdown power of 22.8. Okay, so now we're talking just 3.7. So it is a performance enhancement, and I would say significant, because if you're going by foot-pounds of energy, you're gaining 160 foot-pounds per square inch for an overall power factor of 372. Also a gain of about 47 foot-pounds of energy. And now I'm going to go to the 45 Colt, and the closest I could get by going through Buffalo Bore was using their deer term is, but it's at 260 grains, which traditionally it came out in 255. So again, as close as I can get to original introduced weights at a plus P plus performance. And that 45 Colt with 260 grain leaves at 1,450 feet per second, according to their data, which leaves us 100 foot-pounds of feet per second less than the other two left the barrel at, for 1,214 foot-pounds of energy. So again, we're at 66 pounds of energy less than the 44 mag did. However, when it comes to the Taylors, I'm up to 24.4 pounds of energy under the Taylors program, which leaves me roughly 1.5 pounds heavier than in the Taylors than what the 44 Magnum is. In this case, I would say that's close enough that makes the 44 Magnum under standard conditions the exact same effectiveness as the 45 Colt. Now, and to me that gives me a tie of 44. But either way, once you leave the 357 10 millimeter, they're not even in the same class. Now, I'm going to take 5 minutes. This, for a long time, was my first carry in bear country. Not exact format, but this is nothing more than a cap and ball 44 Remington. Now, there are people coming close to my secret formula for this, but it was what I could have because I was only legally able to carry this by law at the time, and I was, let's face it, 10 foot tall and bulletproof, and I ran a 240 grain Elmer Keith bullet out of it. I was hitting velocities over 1150 feet per second. Doesn't seem like a lot when you're talking about the modern day, but it, for a cap and ball, and I know somebody's going to have to make me prove it, but I don't have to. There's enough others working on my formula out there and doing comparisons and velocities on these that are doing it. One of them's gone. She was doing a great job with that. But that cap and ball bullet at 240 grains at a caliber of .446, mind you, at 1150 feet per second was 705 foot-pounds of energy, which comes to a Taylor's of 17.6. Now, if you come back to the 10 millimeter, that's still 2 pounds, almost 2 pounds over the factor for the 10 millimeter. And I'm going to say it right, 2 foot-pounds of energy higher. And this little cap and ball revolver is far more reliable than most of the 10 millimeter semi-autos out there. And thank God that I am sitting here. I'm going to try to put up at the end of this my hand scratching so that you guys can freeze frame and look at it. But if you can read my hand scratching, I'm going to try to make it there. I'm next to the fire pit. So now I'm going to talk about some of the inherent problems that I have against the 10 millimeter above and beyond just the fact that it's 10 millimeter. And somewhere I set my glasses down and I don't see them. Hope to God I didn't crush them. I see them. So the first thing I'm going to talk to you about is almost every time you see one of these guys with 10 millimeter, first of all, they're pushing it beyond what it was asked to do. The 10 millimeter originally in a semi-auto was asked 155 to 180 grain bullet, and they do it fairly well. However, whenever you get into these projects, every one of them want to try the 200 and they try to push it to the 220. Not designed to do it, so they start dealing with barrel replacements for supported chambers as opposed to unsupported chambers, and lifting springs and whatnot, and it takes fine-tuning, so most of the time not successfully. Recently I watched one of those 10 millimeter guys shoot a gun, I think generation 4 and generation 5. We're at a generation 5 of a Glock, and somehow they still don't have it right. I ain't got nothing against Glock except they look like a damn shoebox. I'm not impressed. But anyway, the difference between the Gen 4 and the Gen 5 was the Gen 4 wasn't running well, but it used to run well. What was the problem? Well, he took the time to paint a camouflage thing on it. It was enough to throw the whole system off. Well, it's the same way as springs. If you don't have the exact same right combination, you have a maybe, and I don't like maybes, period. Then you run into failures in stovepipe, out of battery. Out of battery is something that's been talked about several times, besides has talked about guns being out of battery. Well, when you're talking a semi-automatic, it don't take much but a push against the barrel. And again, remind you, you better have DNA when you're talking bear in that conflict. The chances of being up against that bear are pretty likely, I guess is the word I need. But out of battery and pressure failures. I got it written down as pressure failures because a lot of pictures and reports of these guns being pushed beyond what they're designed to do, and there's ruptures of the polymer guns, sometimes even steel guns, where not only is there a rupture of the barrel or of the action, blows out through the bottom, and no more gun. Just that quick, puts everybody's life in danger, and you're still going to get A. So for that case, I'm going to put down this, and I'm going to say 10 millimeter. If you have to make it to it, maybe it works. And here's the funny thing about that whole story is that guy had, with that polymer gun, had 2 clips and 3 failures to failures. Well, 2 of them was failures to feed, the other was a failure to extract. Well, I don't care how many bullets you have, 15, 30, 100. If there's a chance out of 2 magazines that you have 3 failures, then that kind of negates the idea of more bullets mean better defense. Color me funny, because a stovepipe or an extraction problem on the first shot negates the rest of that magazine. And try to keep your composure trying to fix that. With me so far? The next thing is I want to talk about the majority of the materials. 1, polymer. I'm not ever going to be a polymer fan. I'm not saying it's not effective for what it's meant to do. I'm just saying I'm not going to be a polymer fan. And in this case, we're talking anywhere from livestock, because a lot of these guys in the mountains aren't just working for outfitters. They're hunters, fishermen, cow hands, sheep herders, whatever. Again, back to that compliance, concealed carry, and offense I'm trying to score being 2 different things. And in this case, if you have, and trust me, I know I can drop shit like crazy, even especially now. But back then, for me to drop a bow, guess what? You're not carrying a rifle when you're archery hunting. I killed more elk with archery equipment than I have a rifle. But it wasn't my primary bear protection either. Got sidetracked again. But polymer, you drop it on the ground in Rocky Mountain country, wherever it may be, there's a good chance that you're going to smack it against the rock. Do you trust it's going to hold up? Or for that matter, 850 to 1,200 pound horse accidentally steps on it as it falls out of your thing and you reach down to try to pick it up? Do you trust that that thing's going to hold up? I know for a fact that I've had steel toes that I thought were pretty good steel toes and had horse step on it, and I ended up having to replace that shoe. It happens. Accidents happen. I know we're talking about a lot of ands, ifs, and maybes, but it's the same scenario as an and if a bear shows up. In 20 years you don't get attacked, as I said before. Doesn't mean that in the next 20 minutes one can sneak up behind you. And as you're recreating, I personally have never walked up a trail on purpose to walk right back. I'm either going fishing, archery hunting, berry picking, mushroom picking, gathering wood, activities up and around that. And compliance is the number 1 issue to me. And then I'm going to take and talk about one that may take you by surprise for a minute. Does anybody here understand the concept of a bottom bouncer while fishing or trolling? A bottom bouncer is basically a lightweight sinker that allows a drag at the bottom while your floating device is up here like this. So under a slow troll, presumably it goes up over top of surfaces without getting hung up, but allows whatever you're dragging to still be up here. How much polymer do you think it takes for, say, the Clark's fork or the Ham's Fork or the Henry's Fork, or for that matter the Snake River or the Grove on, to take that buoyant 30, 40, 50, 80% polymer gun, and if you happen to drop it while you're out in the middle of the stream fishing because you are unaware the bear has come up your backside, and you pull it out and accidentally drop it in the stream, that polymer is going to be still there. I've tested it. Trust me, currents will take it. And if you have any doubts of that, just go out there and try to fight it at 180, 200 pounds, or whatever you weigh, and stand in the heavy current of those rivers that you're living in at the time, and tell me that something that can't fight the current is going to stay where you put it. All of the rivers and all the canyons were done by erosion of those rivers. What makes you think polymer is going to stay put? Now, I can pull this out and I can tell you that in this case, there's no polymer here. The only thing close to polymer in this whole gun is right here. Much like this wood is right there. Great, right, you with me? But I still wouldn't carry this. GRIZ have been killed with 45 ACP, but it still would not be my #1 choice. So if that ain't clear enough why I don't like the formats, I'm going to go on to the next one. And I kind of covered it, but I'm going to cover it slightly more, because at this point it's where I don't give a rat's tootie what caliber we're talking about. I don't care if it's 9mm. First of all, pretty impressive that the guy seemed under the story to keep his calm and wherewithal to be persistent. But telling me that 9mm in any format is appropriate for bear, if your story says, well, every time he turned, I took another shot, and every time he turned, I took another shot, and every time. I don't care if it's 4 or 8, and the bear did die. Again, I'm impressed with your ability to carry out that. But it doesn't say much for the effectiveness of the round you're saying if you're talking 4 to 8 rounds. It's not a good argument. But in that case, I'm going to talk about inherent issues with the formats to begin with. I've already covered the failures, but I'm going to make that same argument that I'm making for the 10mm for every 45 auto, super, 460 rolling, 429 Action Express. I don't care what the caliber is. If you cannot count on the platform, first of all, none of them ever actually produce what I consider impressive results, but almost every one of them have a failure rate to them. Not interested in it. I think that's enough said about that. Except for, I'm going to get into the category of those that it hurts my feelings to say I was lucky enough to never get one. And that is another one where, go ahead, make my day, made something really popular that turned out to be horse crap. And that would be the 44 Automag. Looked great, I wanted one, but the reason I never got one is they was overpriced. And I'm thankful that I never got one, because they have been a nightmare. They're still trying to resurrect that gun, and they're still having the same nightmare issues. The next one hurts my feelings. I always wanted one, and that is the Desert Eagle. I personally wanted one in 44 Remington mag, but by the time the Fat 50 Action Express come out, that particular gun had such a bad reputation, I didn't care. 50 caliber or not, I didn't care. Both of them have failures, feeding issues, and weirdly enough, shooting themselves to disassembly. I don't need that. I need a solid platform. I'm not telling you that this can't have a failure now and then, but the follow-ups from that failure doesn't mean, oh my God, how do I get rid of this under pressure? Pull the hammer back, I'm ready to go again. Now, I've gotten to a point where normally, I'm sorry I'm out of air. I haven't been feeling good for a while, but that's okay. I'm getting out of it. It's a nice pretty day. Had a beautiful morning. And it was time to have this. It's time to me to get to this point. If I haven't hurt people's feelings enough, I'm going to throw one old saying that I just made up, something like 20 some odd years ago. I'm sure somebody else said it. But here goes. This is time for me to explain my philosophy. And this is, again, kind of a rip-off from a joke, kind of like the title of this is a rip-off from an ad campaign, is friends. Don't let friends shoot 380s. And now, if you're really upset and you see a growth coming up here, that's called a chip. Flick it off. It's going to be okay. Because I know for a fact that this debate's never going to be over. No more than what's better, 270 or 30-06. It's never going to be over. But that's okay. Flick that stupid ass chip off your shoulder. Get over it and move on. Because it's time for me to explain. If you came here wearing your feelings on your sleeve, looking to get your butt hurt, you're probably already there. Till next time.